Gosh, thanks so much. Yes, that was a great, great introduction. Look, I want to talk about Israel issues, and we're going to do that in a minute. But first of all, I want to say thank you. How many of you have ever been to Idaho? All right, that's good. That's good. I want to thank the Jewish community. In Idaho, I can't tell you the strong support that I have from the Jewish community in Idaho. Both of them support me. You think that's a joke. Look, over the past 20 years, the West has become complacent with respect to the idea that terrorist groups and extremist ideologies are going to be the only real threat that we would continue to face. Starting in 2010, our military was even cut under the belief that spending and domestic issues were the major policy issues we would need to be concerned about here in the United States. However, while attention was focused on domestic issues, finances, and fighting the war on terror, we lost sight of what rivals around the world were doing and neglected to a degree our own defense. In fact, we cut more than $500 billion in military spending over the past decade. It now is very clear what we suspected all along is true, that weakness is prerogative. Today, for the first time in a generation, the United States is facing an international stage with rivals who are trying to compete against the United States. The cornerstones of liberty are once again under assault as we face global competition from China that desires to be more than a regional power, and a resurgent Russia that wants to regain influence it enjoyed during the height of the Cold War. At the same time, rogue states like Iran and North Korea continue to challenge stability in their regions. The current geopolitics of the Middle East highlights how important this growing rivalry has become. 20 years ago, Russia was almost absent from the region. Today, Russia has inserted itself into countless disputes. It has colonized parts of Syria and built a more substantial military presence in the country. It has sought influence with militants in Libya and is trying to sell military equipment all over the region. In the process, Russia has worked to partner with Iran to defend Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. With Russian aircraft defending them, Iran-Quds Force have trained and fought with the Syrian army and recruited Shiite militias, including Lebanese Hezbollah, to help defend Assad. Russia has aided and abetted Assad in the use of chemical weapons against the Syrian people, intensifying and prolonging their suffering. Over the last several years, inaction and poor decisions regarding Syria have had dangerous consequences, allowing Iran and its allies and its ally Hezbollah to expand their reach. Tehran has worked to secure a land bridge connecting Iran to Iraq and Syria through to Lebanon, where they have helped arm Hezbollah with tens of thousands of rockets and missiles that target Israel. How many of you have been on the northern border of Israel, looked in there and seen what's going on in the southern area of Lebanon? That is truly frightening. Since 1982, Iran has built Hezbollah into a powerful proxy force, providing an average of $700 million per year in support of Hezbollah, and it serves as an emissary and interpreter for Iran throughout the Arab world, rallying militias and other fighters to destabilize countries and sow chaos. In Lebanon, Iran has bolstered Hezbollah's political control of the country's power structures, ensuring any efforts to disarm Hezbollah will fail. Today, Hezbollah enjoys unrivaled control of areas close to the Lebanese-Syrian border and an uninterrupted supply line to and from Tehran. This is why I strongly believe we need to do all we can to empower the Lebanese government, limit the influence of Iran and Hezbollah, and improve security for Israel. However, Iran does not want to stop in Lebanon. It is attempting to exert its influence all around the Middle East, making it the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. It is supplied with billions of dollars From the JCPOA, Iran has been spending money to grow, train, and sustain insurgent groups around the region. From the militias in Iraq to the Houthis in Yemen to the Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Just last week, we saw Islamic Jihad condemn Hamas for its restraint after rockets were launched from Gaza. Islamic Jihad is itching to start a war on Israel's southern border. In Yemen, Iran has exacerbated one of the largest humanitarian crises in modern history. Intense fighting has shuttered the ports and made it difficult to move food or fuel around the country, and cholera is on the rise. An estimated 24 million are now in need of assistance, and 16 million people, more than half of the country's population, remain severely food short. Meanwhile, Iran provides the Houthis with ballistic missiles to attack Saudi Arabia, and missiles that are fired at U.S. ships and others in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, threatening one of the world's most important trade routes. And from where did all the resources for Iran's adventurism come? We all know. From the billions of dollars that were frozen until President Obama signed the JCPOA. The failure to address all of the bad things Iran was doing, including its malign regional influence, IED and ballistic missile production, and refusal to comply with numerous UN resolutions, and instead focusing solely on its nuclear program, was a colossal error and a doomed strategy that we are now living with. There is only one thing you can say after watching what happened. I told you so. Not only I told you so, we told you so. Lots of us said so. I'm deeply disappointed in those who didn't join us and many who really knew better. This was not a partisan exercise, but a matter of national security, and this mistake weakened America's national security. We should also not pretend that the JCPOA was a success in limiting Iran's nuclear weapons program either. Under the terms of the agreement, Iran is allowed to continue some aspects of its nuclear program, such as developing better centrifuges. By the end of the agreement, Iran has all but guaranteed the right to then develop nuclear weapons. To a nation that counts its history in centuries, waiting 10 years was not a difficult term for them to accept. So while the JCPOA might have pushed Iran's ability to make a nuclear weapon from 2 or 3 months out to a full year, that was simply not enough, especially given how little Iran had to do in return. This is why I fully support President Trump's decision to terminate the U.S. participation in the JCPOA, and indeed, I personally urged him to do so. Since pulling out of the JCPOA, President Trump has pursued a maximum pressure type of campaign on Iran, which I believe is the only way of attaining shared U.S.-Israeli objectives in the Middle East. I'm encouraged by the fact that German industry is now pulling out of Iran. It took them some time to realize that trying to do business in a country where the Ayatollah still controls the economy is guaranteed failure. I hope the governments that still defend the JCPOA will recognize that Iran leaders want the riches simply so they can export more instability and hate and not grow their economy. President Trump's maximum pressure campaign has deprived the regime of around $10 billion in state revenue. Still more pressure can be placed on the Iran regime. We need to rapidly take all Iranian oil offline. President Trump's policies have removed about 60% of Iran's capacity from the markets, but Iran still has about 900,000 barrels a day that they can put on the market, and this is still too much. We are committed to, and we will, reduce this amount even more in the future. In other areas, the Trump administration is testing new approaches to decades-old problems. The president is committed to pushing for a real peace between Israel and the Palestinians. It is clear direct negotiations between the two parties are the only way forward, and he took action against those who served to undermine real talks. This administration not only closed the PLO office in D.C., but the PLO's failure to engage in U.S.-led peace efforts, but also cut off U.S. funding to UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, better known as UNRWA, a move I have been urging for years. The Trump administration also took the bold step of actually moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But there's more to be done. We will continue to oppose efforts to isolate or delegitimize Israel at the UN, particularly in the Human Rights Council, and will continue blocking efforts by the Palestinian Authority to have observer status in various parts of the UN. The first bill I managed as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and the first bill to pass by the Senate this year on a bipartisan basis, was the Strengthening America's Security in the Middle East Act, Senate Bill number 1. This bill authorizes important military assistance to Israel and extends important sanctions against Syria's brutal dictator and his friends and financial backers in Iran and Russia. S1 not only authorizes at least $3.3 billion in military assistance to Israel per annum through 2028, but also the transfer of precision-guided munitions to Israel to help it defend the sovereignty of its borders. The legislation also had another important provision, one you all know about, and it was to protect Israel from discrimination by empowering state and local governments to counter anti-Israel economic boycotts. The scourge of anti-Semitism has no place in the world, let alone in the United States Congress itself, and we must do everything we can to confront it. Bipartisan support for Israel remains strong in the Senate. It used to be true for all of Congress, but as of late, anti-Israel rhetoric has taken hold in the House of Representatives. For the many years I have been in office, we have always been closely aligned with Israel and the Jewish people. And I assure you, it is the U.S. Senate and my colleagues and I are friends of Israel and continue to support peace and stability in that region. Right now, S1 has been languishing in the House of Representatives. It is a disgrace to see this bill has been taken hostage by junior members of the House of Representatives who do not appreciate America's alliances and the need for friends in the world and in the Middle East in particular. I have been astonished that a handful of young new Democrat members could control this. The tail is wagging the dog. If you have Democrat friends in the House of Representatives, and I hope that you do, tell them to stand up and tell these ill-informed obstructionists that enough is enough. Let the anti-BDS legislation go. Make no mistake, we're entering into a new period of international rivalry, and this is especially true in the Middle East. Many in Congress have been slow to recognize this growing competition, and still others would rather the United States remain on the sidelines. In a far more competitive and unstable world, it is critical that the United States regain the competitive edge needed in this century, and that also means relying on our allies to make our team stronger. In the Middle East, the United States has some transactional partners, but few allies, especially strategic allies that share our commitment to common values like democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. In fact, our truest ally and friend in the Middle East is Israel, with whom we share these very values. Given the great power competition that is building in the world again, the special relationship between our two nations is important as ever. Through our 7-year relationship, the United States and Israel have cultivated an incredible bond. We have worked together closely in the realms of economics, business, science, research, and innovation. We've remained committed to maintaining strong security cooperation and upholding Israel's qualitative military edge. Like you, I'm committed to move forward, and I'm honored to fight alongside of you to continue in that quest. God bless America, and thank you for having me here today.